Okay, first of all, I want to thank you so much. You're being very, very kind. And just a small thing, I did my PhD in the Universidade de Aveiro, the university. It's a university in Portugal, but I don't work there. I work now, and I love that. I teach in other institutions, other universities, but I work now as a teacher in normal school, secondary school. And I love doing that. I prefer doing that than teaching at university, actually. First of all, I want to thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very honored. I think Kazakhstan has the most beautiful flag in the planet, and I admire a lot, like the difference that we have, and I think we can learn from that. So I'm going to start right away, okay? And I would the ending of my presentation would be about some advice to teachers. So I will start actually with the ending. So my first advice to teachers is I want to remind you that probably some of them don't know about the butterfly effect. Is like when small things can have non-linear impacts on a complex system. Example, you're having a coffee with a friend, and then you change the career, the job of that friend with the small talk. Or I'm gonna tell you, like, why I play electric bass. I'm also a musician. Why do I play electric bass? In ninth grade, when I was a student, I had a teacher, that a physics teacher. He told me, well, I played bass and I love that sound. Just like this small sentence, like maybe like 3 seconds of interaction between me and the teacher, it changed my life. And then I went to London to study music. And all sometimes, and what I want to tell you is what you do. I'm very proud to be here talking to teachers, because what you do is like the most important thing uh, in the universe, because you change. What you do is really important. You change lives. You change worlds. You change the world of every student. So, and sometimes I was talking about the butterfly effect, because sometimes, like, a small thing, like, the butterfly effect, like a butterfly moves the wings, and then a big storm occurs in the other side of the planet. So in education, it's a little bit like that. Sometimes we say something to a student and it makes a huge impact, and we don't notice that. So I'm very happy to talk to you. And I know that you in Kazakhstan, the teachers.
Mr. Martinho, where are we going to put the video? Because the video is already waiting on the screen.
Oh, okay. It's after I speak about
Okay.
educational research. Okay.
Okay.
But okay. So I was telling first that teachers are really important, and they can make a difference. And sometimes the small things that we do, it has a huge impact on our students. Another thing I want to tell you is we are going to see a video. I'm my field of research was open plan schools, so we are going to see a really different kind of school. So maybe if the video is ready, I think a lot of people are in, let's watch the video, and then we can talk a little bit about that. Okay, so let's watch the video now, and you're going to see a different kind of school.
Here at the Vitra School in southern Stockholm, they are breaking down the boundaries. You won't find corridors of classrooms here. There are no walls. Spaces are loosely defined by subtle borders and large, abstract creations.
Many of my kids said, this is great because we don't feel trapped. We don't feel like they trapped us in a small room and not letting us get anywhere. And a lot of my students actually say they focus better here because they don't sit there thinking, when can I get out? When can I get out?
This section of the school serves as a video viewing area, a room for relaxation, a flexible space for different types of learning. It's clear the children here don't want to go back to a traditional school setting.
I would feel more locked in because it's so many people in one room, and here it's so open, and I feel free.
Every pupil here has their own laptop computer, a modern touch in a forward-thinking school where design is seen as playing an influential role in the learning process. From the outside, the school building doesn't look like anything out of the ordinary. The architect behind it says it's what's on the inside that counts.
At Vitra Schools, we have made a very clear choice. We have prioritized the interior design above a new building architecture in walls. So, in a way, the economy has gone more into the chairs and less into the bricks.
Rosa believes the layout here enables children to learn on their own terms, in settings that encourage them to get up and come to school.
I have a daughter which is 7 years old. For her, coming to this place, it's like a playground basically. You have an environment which is very stimulating, and she really enjoys coming here. It's difficult to pull her out of school when I come to collect her. So.
You know, it's about an open plan school, and my field of research for many years was about open plan schools. You know, I really believe that open plan schools can be like a solution for the future of education, and I think we should have more open plan schools like that one. Unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of misunderstanding, and there's a lot of mistakes being made about open plan schools, and they were very contested. And first of all, before talking to open plan schools, I'm going to that subject. I'm going to tell you something about educational research, and why it is important to talk about educational research, because the only evidence in educational research is that this kind of schools really work. At least they're not that I know of. It's very important to tell. You know, I had a subject to tell you. It's like I put a title, and the title is "The Softness of Educational Research." You know, educational research is really hard to do. You know, but the results are very soft. You know, it's hard to do because you have to complex interactions, and you have so many variables. But you know why the results are so soft, flexible? Because we cannot trust in every result completely. You know, because you know you change to another country or to another school, and the results, you know, maybe you cannot apply the same results there. And I send you before like an article. I think I have it here actually, and I'm gonna read. You know, it's the name of the article is "Educational Research: The Hardest Science of Them All," and it's by David Berliner. And I'm going to read a little bit because it's really interesting, and this is not related with space, but then we can apply it to space. It says he studied students' evaluation anxiety in elementary and middle school classrooms. So he studied anxiety like before tests, and then the generalized finding was that the higher the scores on evaluation anxiety questionnaire, the lower the score on the achievement tests, which means like if the students were more with more anxiety, then they had lower scores. But it is funny. So it generalized that conclusion: more anxiety, worse results. But then, you know, in the same study, in a few classes, and I'm just reading, in a few classes, the evaluation anxiety apparently was turned into some productive motivational force and resulted in improved student achievement. So in other cases, it was really the opposite of that first conclusion, of the generalized conclusion. So the generalized conclusion was like, if you are very anxious, you have low results in tests. But in some cases, it's like if you are very with a high level of anxiety, then you can like have better results. So in educational research, you know, it depends on the students, it depends on the teachers, it depends on a lot of things. So can we trust educational research? Well, it depends. I'm sorry, it's a complex science. And why am I talking about educational research? Because there are no proofs that open plan schools cannot work. And all the evidence that I have, it's really that open plan schools are great, and can function really, really well. And I've seen, I show you like that this video. It's a different, like, no classrooms. Is that possible? Well, in my opinion, I think we could have like a closed room or two, but you could have also like open plan environments. um, I read that the problem with research is that sometimes like politicians use the results of educational research in a wrong way. Sometimes there's also in the article I mentioned. There's also they talk about the program No Child Left Behind Act in America, and they left a lot of children behind, and they use like the research, and they use the research for propaganda. So sometimes they use educational research like with wrong intentions, and the article I recommend for you to read them, because so sometimes there's educational research, but we cannot generalize all of those conclusions to every, like, if one school works really well in Portugal, I cannot use that same ideas in Kazakhstan, because it's also a different country. So we have to adapt. We have to know in deep. I would love to go to your country and to see some schools, to do some seminars, and because we have to adapt to the context. So be careful. Don't trust politicians. They use sometimes the results of educational research in a wrong way. And the example of the No Child Left Behind Act, it's in the article that I mentioned, and it's a good example of how politicians use educational research in a wrong way. So politicians sometimes use wrong information, or information the wrong way. So there is no scientific, this is really important because it's my field of research. There is no scientific evidence that open plan schools failed. I'm sorry about the word fail, but the open plan schools were never, in my opinion, were never a wrong option. So it depends on the complexity in schools, in the interactions between people, on the context, on spaces, on social possibilities, social environments. So there's a lot of variables, and in the certain conditions, open plan schools can really work, and it's a really different kind of teaching. But before going to open plan schools, I would like to go to talk to you about school spaces and educative spaces. Yeah, in the beginning, I sent you that sentence, like, it takes a whole village to educate a child. This is like a sentence from African people, and it's really true. We it, everything around us can be information and can educate us. The way a teacher dresses and go to school sends information. Like, today I have like a David Bowie uh, sweatshirt, or I send a message. If I had Mozart, like, or a violin, or I send a lot of messages and information, and that can be also motivational, and can change like the minds. But I want to tell you that we are a product of the time we live, and where we live. It's also very, very important. The places where we live. Like, I live near the ocean, so I have, like, people in Portugal. There are a lot of fishermen. There are a lot of people, like, in the 15th century, like, the Portuguese went to discover, like, other lands, and that also it's not only about the talents of like navigators. It was related also with the space where Portugal was, you know. So the geography is important, you know. It conditions like the way that you live and what you do. I'm going to tell you some things about space and time, and space and time is really interconnected. First, you know, if I'm going to tell you about the exams, for instance, you know, exams in Portugal, I think in Kazakhstan and in some countries, you know, it's like there's rituals about the exam, right? So you have like clocks to watch the exam, you know, to measure the time of the exam, and time and space are really connected. I'm going to give you another example. You know, the Big Ben, you know, it's architecture with the Big Ben in London, you know, like the clock. So in the Big Ben, the clock belongs to the architecture. You know, in the building you have a watch, a big watch, and then you can see the time. And in some classrooms they have inside the classroom a watch, you know, and in that it condition it, you know, it can changes the way you teach, because if you have to rush if the class is finishing, so the time is a resource, but sometimes limits you. So and also this is important about time, and in these conferences maybe most of the people did not talk about time. Time and space are connected, that's really important. And sometimes we use time to compensate learning problems. Imagine like a child cannot learn something, and then we, to compensate, we give extra time. So giving extra time sometimes in a different space. Time is really important in education, like sometimes more time, more learning. And if you have like an ideal space, imagine like you have the perfect space, the perfect classroom, or the perfect open plan school, you save time preparing, or you save time teaching, you know. So the physical space can benefit time, and time also can change space, because if you have more time you can like adapt and move things around. Imagine you don't have much time, so you go there and you use the space that you have, but you have more free time, you can like, so I think teachers should have more free time to prepare also like the classroom space. um uh, Different, this is also interesting, like different lessons. Imagine I'm going to give this lesson, and then I prepare like the same kind of lesson for two different students, and you know, different lessons with the same time can have different results in learning, you know. Like maybe I prepare this and I'm going to do the same with other students, and then the result is not the same. So we all know that. Extending time and space, sometimes we don't think about that. Well, we use the school, but I'm going to give you an example, like homework, you know. Homework, like, you know, you teach in the classroom or you teach in the school, and then how can I use like the free time of a student to learn more? The homework is that kind of learning. Of course, you know, I think we all learn outside of the school, you know. We all learn, like we go to a museum, you can be at home reading a book. So educative spaces, it's like the universe, you know. Every space on the universe can be a learning place, you know. It was funny because some Brazilian colleagues said that we're reading my PhD thesis in the Amazon jungle, you know. So you can be in the Amazon jungle and learning about open plan schools and a lot of new information, you know. So I think every space can be educative space, but school space is more restricted. So homework is a way to expanding learning time, and it's a learning time outside of the school, so in another space. I want to talk to you also about time and curriculum. So just a funny fact, like more hours are given like to, you know, the curriculum, it has a hierarchy. Sorry about that word. So I'm going to explain better. um, in the curriculum, like the things we teach, there are disciplines that are more important, not more important for me. I love music, so I'm a musician, and for me, my most important subject was music. But like in the curriculum in Portugal, and I'm sure like in Kazakhstan, it's the same. In most schools, in the majority of schools, like mathematics is more important than arts. Mathematics is more important than music. Like, how do I know that? Think about the hours they give to mathematics and how many hours they give to music. So like in Portugal, probably like they have like 5 hours a week for mathematics and only like um, less than 2 hours for music. So there's a hierarchy like between subjects. So more time to the things they think there are really uh, because for me, music was really more important than mathematics. I'm not nothing against mathematics, and I love mathematics, but you know so the curriculums have a problem that they make the same curriculum for like every child. Oh, you have to learn this, in some cases, and actually different people need different time to learn, and sometimes, and I think they should have also different curriculums. Why should we all have the same curriculum? So we have to think about that. And so we all know the theory of relativity, Einstein theory. So in Einstein theory, like different people can have like a different time perception, or living different time in different space, and that it's an educational principle that exists since education exists. So we have to treat relativity. It's always, and you can read my PhD, there's a chapter about time and space. So relativity in education for me always existed. So we should treat like every student in a different way. Like everyone is like a special soul and has special needs. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't make much sense talking about special needs. For me, every student has special needs because it has specific needs. So the theory of relativity always existed in education because we all are different and we all have different perceptions of time and space. So how our learning time is affected by space, and how can time affect space? Well, like I said before, an ideal space would benefit learning, like saving time. Imagine you have all the resources, the classroom is really perfect, you just go there and you can do your activities. But I'm going to give the example of one of the classes where I teach. I go there and then I have to put some cables in the computer, I have to fix a lot of things, so I lose a lot of time preparing my classroom every time I'm going to teach. Why is not everything in the place, So having the ideal space can save a lot of time. And like I said, if you have enough time, you can change or adapt the space. But the ideal, and I wrote that, sometimes we have to adapt to the space, but that's what I don't like. I wish like I could have a space that would adapt to my needs, but most of the time it's like teachers go and they have that space, and they it's the persons that are adapting to the space, and it should be the opposite. Should go to a school, and then I adapt. I change walls, I move things, I put change the color is also interesting because we know, and there's some research about that, about the influence of colors, like in the learning. So why not having walls? I could change the color of the walls. Something like green and red have different influence. Um, so just to repeat something that is important, an ideal space would benefit learning, saving time. And if we have more time, we have also more time to change space. In schools, space and time interactions are very easy to see. Sometimes but is it space related with time? Of course. And you can see timetables, like in Portugal and all over the world. You have, like, in schools, you have the timetable, and you have, like, at this time, this class is in that space. Like, imagine mathematics at 8 in the morning on Mondays, always at that classroom. So time and space, it's essential elements for structuring teaching, and we also all know that. But what is less known by us is that school buildings are not neutral. School facilities have hidden message, hidden curriculum. So this is like the title. I'm gonna the title of my communication that I was thinking about was learning with the organization of space and time. Well, the organization of space and time in our schools, it has messages. Like, I'm gonna give you an example. When I enter in a classroom anywhere, if I see, like, this, like, imagine, like, rows of tables, and, like, the desk of the teacher, there's a pedagogy, connected with that organization of space. Also, there's a lot of messages. In Portugal, we had, like, crosses with Jesus in the cross in some classrooms. And so it's a message sent. It's a silent message, or the flag of a country, or or the photo of a president. So it's a lot of messages that are in the walls and in the space. And I'm going to tell you a story. I was in Iran. I was in a lot of countries visiting schools. And in the University of Yazd in Iran, there was in the floor, in the entrance of the university, and I have a photo of that in my PhD thesis. There's a photo of it's not a photo, it's painted, the flag of Israel and the flag of United States of America. And so people, when they would put their feet, I think, to humiliate, I don't know the idea, but people would clean their feet in those flags. So it's a message like, oh, we don't like Israel, we don't like United States. So space can have strong messages. And even in Portugal, we had a time of, like, in the dictatorship that we had, with terrible governments that we had, they built, like, huge buildings for the schools, and there was a message like, oh, this is, like, really huge. And then some of the people could not enter in those schools. So it was like, oh, this is like the elite of teaching. So be careful about the message that space is sending. And I could do a course on that, like, years. I could, like, be spending a lot of time talking to you just about that. Well, but I'm going to talk about what I know best. And actually, I love that subject, how school space has secret messages, how it teaches with silence, how, hidden message, hidden curriculum in space. But I'm sure if I go to Kazakhstan, I can, like, do a seminar of 3 days and talk to you about that. Well, but my main subject, I think my expertise is open plan schools. So, and the question I have here for you guys is, open plan schools, was that a story of innovation without change? If it is possible, I would like to see the other video. We have another video for people maybe didn't watch the first one. Maybe they entered a little bit late. Is it possible to watch, like, the open plan school video that I have? It's another video. I think I have sent, like, at least 5 videos.
Design and architecture are in many ways a unique part of Danish cultural heritage. Although from the outside it may look like an ordinary modern upper high school, inside it's a different story. Ørstad Gymnasium opened in 2007, has no walls, no classrooms and spaces that are only loosely defined by permeable borders.
What makes Ørstad Gymnasium unique is our building with the open learning environments and our use of ICT in teaching. You have to organize teaching where the students are active. And one way of forcing teachers to do that is by having a building where you can't have traditional teaching all the time. You have to do something different in this building.
At least a third of the lessons take place in the open spaces. These students are in the so-called group areas. Their psychology teacher has them working on different types of stress. Then, through a ball-throwing game, they share what they've learned.
I have to make my teaching much more differentiated and activated, and I have to structure it before I go into the class. You see, there will always be people passing by. There'll be noise somewhere, so you have to be sure that they are doing what you want them to do.
The staircase is the focal point of the building and the symbol of the school. Here, students can chat, meet their friends, and get some exercise with the frequent up and down trips. 3 circular areas are dedicated to breaks and free time in between lessons, although students also use them as work areas.
I chose it because of, first of all, the study line psychology. I think that's really interesting. But when I came to visit the school, I also think the architecture and the way the school is built is very interesting, and you know, the open groups and how we work is very interesting.
The students use only electronic teaching materials, and while they're working in groups, the teacher monitors each pupil's progress from the computer.
Sometimes they go over the edge and some make a bit too much noise, but that's why we do a lot of it over the internet and communicate over the internet, so we don't have to talk too much and talk over distances. So we keep the noise at a minimum, and it's usually not a problem. Yeah.
Okay, that's so lovely. That's all. I hope you like to see this. I think it's really lovely because, you know, you can find in the internet a lot of protest against open plan schools, but those people, they don't know what they are talking about. You know, maybe they know a little bit of noise or a little bit of. I'm going to explain. We are going to enter in this world of open plan schools. So, you know, first of all, open plan schools really work. You know, we saw 2 videos in this conference of 2 open plan schools. You know, no problems. And you know, the comments is like, oh, of course, as for educational research, I would love to go there and to see. Sometimes, you know, videos are a construction. We have to, you know, I'm very critical about that. So, but they are still open in open plan. And you know, it's not the traditional, I don't like the word tradition, but you understand what I mean. It's not like the traditional classrooms and corridors. You know, it's a really different space for a school, so with open environments. So like I was saying, open plan schools, was that a story of innovation without change? So they appeared like open plan schools, and then, you know, in some cases they closed the openness. First, I want to tell you, and the 2 videos and more evidence there is we have about this. Open plan schools did not fail. Open plan schools did not have the conditions to succeed. You know, the ones that I don't like the word failed, but the ones that, you know, that didn't work very well. The problem were that the conditions were not given for them to work. It's like, imagine you and Kazakhstan as a wonderful space. You have spaceships that going to space from Kazakhstan. So imagine sending a spaceship to Mars, but with no fuel. And I think, or you have to have the conditions and the materials and everything, at least the minimum, and the minimum was not given to hundreds of open plan schools, maybe thousands. um, in the internet, I see a lot of wrong information about open plan schools. I see like things like open plan. I was watching also a video. I didn't send you the bad videos, but there are a lot of bad videos about open plan schools. And one of them says, like, I think it was on the title, something like open plan classrooms. It's a contradiction. No, if it is open plan, there are no classrooms. And I'm going to tell, actually, if I was to design an open plan school, I would also have like some rooms closed, because for some like individual teaching and like for some activities, it is necessary to have like a closed space with no noise, with no distractions. But in other cases, if you are doing arts, if you are doing dance, if you are researching in your computer, and if you want like adaptable, flexible spaces. So I think we should have different spaces and different organization of the architecture inside the school, of different designs. So diversity is the key word here. So like I was saying, so in the internet, I found like this term like open plan classrooms. That's really wrong. That's missing the point. So if the classroom is a closed thing, and an open plan, it's open. So people that are writing about open plan classrooms, they don't understand what is open plan teaching or open plan schools. So for me, open plan classrooms, that does not exist. In my article, open plan schools in Portugal, it's the uh, PEB Exchange article. I think I have sent it to you. I present the definition of what open plan school is. It's a school built to a design which does not include self-contained classrooms. So no, in an open plan design, no, there are no closed classrooms. The first open in that article, I said that the first open plan school was open in 1959 in the United Kingdom. And why, for me, are open plan schools so special? Because they in the beginning, in the 60s, in the 70s, they incorporated a lot of progressive educational ideas. One of them was like the breakdown of the class as a unit. Like I'm going to use the word traditional. I don't like that word because traditional can mean a lot of things. But in a traditional school with classrooms, like imagine a corridor and every teacher, like one teacher teaching like a group of students all of the same age, teaching like one subject like mathematics in one classroom, and then the other classroom is another group of teaching of students with the same age. So like in a traditional school with classrooms, you know the teacher is teaching the same content in the same like time, and it's like the Jean-Baptiste de La Salle. It has a great influence. Jean-Baptiste de La Salle, I think I have the year where he was born. Jean-Baptiste de La Salle was born in the 17th century in 1651 and died in 1719. 1719. So in Jean-Baptiste de La Salle was a big influence on education, and I think not a very good one, because the idea was like teaching like a lot of students like they were one. The idea was like, because it was like the factory model, so I'm going to teach like 30 students like they were one student. I'm going to teach the 30 students in the same way. That's very good for teachers. So for teachers it's amazing. So I'm going to teach, like I could teach 100 students. I'm going to teach 100 students, and I'm going to teach exactly the same, in the same time, in the same pace, in the same space, in the same manner. But actually, diversity is what we have in schools, and that principle of Jean-Baptiste de La Salle, it's still in our schools, it's still in our school organization. But I think in the 21st century, and even the experience of open plan schools, I think we can change that. We can have like different spaces and different time for learning for different students. So open plan schools, you know what they did? They they did the breakdown of the class as a unit, and then they mix different students. I could have like a student from the grade 5, no grades actually. It's like I could have a student from grade 5 with learning with a student from grade 9, and like different levels could be mixed. I'm going to give you an example. I teach in different spaces, and one of my favorite I don't like the word classroom, but one of my favorite spaces to teach is a stage. So I teach music in a stage, like you know, a theater stage. So I teach there, and the group of students, of course, I teach music, so it's very different from mathematics, and in some cases, of course, it is necessary to have the kids of the same level, same age. But in my class, I have different levels, like 12th grade students with the students of the 3rd grade, and it's so great because they interact, they play music together, and it's actually it's like an open plan school environment, because I have different groups, I have different teachers working with me, and I wish you could see that experience, but it's really different from the teaching. So teaching can happen also outside of the classroom. So the breakdown of the class as its unit. So in open plan schools, you can like use no classes. You can have like a student working alone in one space, a group of students with an activity in another space. So we go according to the needs of the students. It's a lot of work for teachers. I'm going to tell you that, but the teachers use one thing is team teaching. So to have open plan schools working very well, you need a team of teachers. Like I could be just with one student, like in a maybe like a desk working with that student on every like detail of like a mathematics problem or something like that, or helping that student. But other colleague of mine could be with another group of students. Other group of students could be independent. What is really important in open plan schools is planning, and a lot of planning and work in pairs, preparing. It's you need to prepare more to work in an open plan school, at least in the beginning, and then the things flow. But the problem, and now you can understand, like teacher were used to teach in closed spaces and alone. Most of the teachers in the world are like alone in the classroom with their students. Yeah, and they say their student, oh, this is my student. And in the open plan environments, no, you can change that idea. You can have like different students working with different teachers, and you need to prepare. Like I know a school, an open plan school, like the most innovative school in Portugal for me, open plan school in Portugal, and the article I wrote about that. And I went to visit that school, and like the students would write like, oh, I need to know this, or there was a plan, or I'm going to learn about nature, or like plants, how the seeds grow, like any subject, and they would write down like the task, and the student could be independent, like searching, and it was almost like self-learning, or it could be with a group of other students, or it could be with a group of teachers, it's flexible. So, but it needs a lot of preparation. And in that school, it's really funny because when, like, I need to know like how to do addiction or some mathematics thing. And when the student learned, he would write down on a wall, I can teach this. So then, or I know this subject. And then other students could go there, oh, he knows this subject. And then students would teach other students. It's amazing. And actually, I don't know if you know about the computer on the wall. There's a guy in India called, I met him, the other day, Sugata Mitra. Do you know this name, Sugata Mitra? He's very kind. I met him, we were chatting, and what he did in India is really cool. He decided, like in the end of the 90s, I think it was 1999, some years ago, before like the explosion of the internet, he put like computers on walls in a very poor zones in India. So it was like computers available for poor children. And what is funny is like children went there and they were learning like writing in the computers. And one of the kids were teaching to older one, was teaching to a younger one. And so we all learn. I have an article, I think it's my best article. It's about self-learning, autodidactism. The most important things we learn in life, we learn by ourselves. Sometimes I learn a lot of things with no teachers. We all did. We learn how to walk outside of the school environment. We learn how to talk outside of the school environment. We learn how to love outside of the schools, maybe also inside of the schools. But some of really important things we can learn by ourselves and outside of the school walls. So I think we should consider that we are all learners, and learning can happen everywhere. And I think treating our students as potential learners, and they can learn everywhere, it's really important. But it's because sometimes teachers focus on, let's have just this time and space in the classroom. But sometimes what they have in the background, what they learn like before going to school, is really important. That's why the diversity, and they are so different. So I'm going to talk to you guys about the progressive educational ideas. So in open plan classrooms, they break down the class as a unit. So they could have like different students of different ages. You can mix, no problem if they are, and actually, because there's diversity, so you can have like a older student working with a younger student, no problem with that. And you can have mixed groups, and you can different activities. So grouping, I wrote here, grouping exercises according to centers of interest. That's more important. Like, oh, this is the center of interest for poetry, and then you go to the corner, and everyone that is interested in learning about poetry go to that corner and read and write and sing poetry. So imagine like creating like a creative environment and centers of interest. I'm sorry, this is very huge. I've done like more than 20 years of research about open plan schools, and it's for me, it's a mission impossible to give you all of this like in 1 hour. I wish I can go to Kazakhstan and like in 3 or 4 days of seminars, and maybe visiting some Kazakh schools, I can like give you much more information. But I'm gonna like give you like the essential. The essential is like breakdown of the classes unit, grouping exercises according to centers of interest, individualized teaching. So you can teach like in a group of students, but you can also work just with one student. But in the traditional, sorry about the word tradition, but in a traditional classroom, sometimes if you are working with one student, you lose the other ones. So that's why open plan schools, they can provide more solutions and more interesting solutions. So sometimes in an open plan environment, I can be with just one student, and then the team of teachers could be with other students. So in the open plan, they have adequate environments and spaces. They have team teaching, is really important. And some of these ideas were influenced by the new education movement. People like Maria Montessori, she was a big influence on that. The first open plan school in Portugal was open in 1973. And in 1985, we have 371 open plan schools. So more, almost 400 schools. Like, so they grow. We had a famous, for me, it's famous. We had an architect. She spent a lot of time designing these open plan schools. They were not very accepted in Portugal. But open plan schools in Portugal, open plans in Portugal, so we have almost 400 in 371 in 1985, and most of them closed the open areas. Why that happened? If it is so good, why they closed? One of the things is open plan schools did not have all the conditions to function properly. So, for instance, there was no training for teachers, and well, the training appeared very late. I'm gonna tell you about this. The first open plan, like I said, the first open plan school in Portugal opened in 1973. But the first training session for teachers was in the 80s. So they open like an open plan school. They send the teachers to those schools and no training. No one explained, well, this is a really different. You have to work in teams. And you know what happened in Portugal? It was terrible, actually. What happened? Imagine, like, they open like in 73, they open open plan school, like no classrooms, and then they send like a group of teachers there. Imagine like one of the things in the project was like you could have like a nucleus, like very big, like with the equivalent of like 3 classrooms, so like a big space, and then you could have like 120 students. So the number of students, the study was not very well done. So a lot of students, imagine 120 students for 3 teachers. It's anyone that knows that that's impossible. So the number of students were very, very high. And so the conditions were not properly given. So other problem was that like the teachers went to those open plan schools in Portugal, and they didn't know nothing about open plan. So they go there, they see a big space, and I'm here, and I think, well, oh, this is my students. So it was open plan design, and then they decide, well, but I cannot teach in open plan. I don't know nothing about that. So they move the furniture to make artificial walls. So it was really terrible because they were not using the space, they were not using team teaching, they were not doing nothing as it was planned by the architects. And it failed because the conditions were not given, and I could explain more about that. But one of the biggest um, names in open plan schools is a guy called Neville Bennett. And I think he died. No, I think he died. But before he died, I had the chance to send him an email. Now with the internet, it's so easy. Like the other day, I was chatting with Howard Gardner, of the multiple intelligence theory. So it's so easy. You can like discuss things like with people and ideas. And I was discussing with Neville Bennett this idea about open plan. schools, and he said to me by email that open plan schools could work really well. It could work well provided that teachers were aware of the possibilities of space use and were well organized. You know, a lot of planning, a good organization. So in those cases, you know, they were probably better than a tradition. Sorry about the word tradition, but you know, a traditional school with classrooms. You know, so open plan. The evidence that I have is that open plan schools can work really well, and you know, I'm almost finishing because I want to be on time. And like one of the subjects that I have here is creating motivation and interest. It's not all in the mind. So as you understand, and we've seen some videos, you know, the space can add motivation and interest. Like I think it was the first video, they had like guitars on the wall. You know, if I was in that school, oh, you know, maybe I'm interested in playing guitar. Oh, I want to try this. And you know, like having things available, you know, probably a school with no guitars would have less students playing guitar. You know, so the space can add interest and motivation, and even artwork, and like imagine that we have in the walls a lot of mathematic formulas. Like in my school they have that, like the area of the triangle there. You know, I wish I had some photos. I promise if I go to Kazakhstan I'll send you some pictures of my school. And so in the walls there's a lot of information that can be educative, like mathematical formulas, and that can be used as interest. So you know, it is possible to create motivation and interest with physical space. So it's not all in the mind. It's not all, but I would love to tell you something about the mind. It's what I'm doing research right now. So I'm going to tell you about a little experience that I did in the Museum of Communications in Lisbon, and they were having there like they called it was the name that they called the School of the Future, you know, so in that communications museum. And I was invited to create like a lesson of the future in that School of the Future. So I was teaching at to in a Escola Superior de Educação. Sorry about the Portuguese. It's like a university, a superior school of education. Jean Piaget. I was teaching it like yeah, it's like a university to adults, to future teachers. So I asked them, well, do you want to get in this experience? So I had several teachers, I think now they are teachers, working with me, and we use the open plan school ideas inside that School of the Future. Sorry, the name School of the Future is theirs, it's not mine. So and the results were amazing. You know, like 95% of the students, and I think I sent you an article about this experience. 95% of the students prefer such a flexible types of teaching, you know, like team teaching. You know, they prefer like learning with one teacher and then go to other teacher and like move around. And 100%, all of them found that the open plan school type of teaching, I'm sorry, there's a lot of differences in different open plan schools. I'm saying this, but in that situation, using some of the principles used in open plan schools, 100% of the students found it offered more advantages. So it was more profitable and facilitated learning. You know, they learn, you know, in a more easy way. And you know, and nowadays I only know about, you know, they have built maybe like 400 open plan schools. I don't know the number, but they open hundreds of open plan schools in Portugal. But you know, most of them closed I think the majority of them. But I know that one, one open plan school is, is called Escola de Ponte. There's one open plan school I visited when I was doing my research of the PhD, and it's still at the time was, and I guess it's still open, and they built another, they constructed another building, and it's still open, that I heard of. And actually the guy that was one of the teachers there was in the conference where I met Sugata Mitra, that Indian guy. But what I want to tell you is, that school, there's a school in Portugal that was, everything was open plan school environment, and there was an external committee evaluating that school. And that external, first of all, the studies, they noticed that the teachers in that school were very motivated, very interested in teaching, and the students also in learning. So that external committee that did the evaluation of that, said that the learning environment is stimulating. So in that open plan school, the only one that I know of in Portugal that survived. So the learning environment is stimulating, it is inviting, it is systematic, a lot of things at the same time. It's structured, it's active, it's diversified, and is very significant to people's, people. I'm gonna, this is also in my article that I wrote, and one of them that I sent to you. And one of the things is that in this evaluation of that school, they saw that that school had better results in exams, and less dropouts, much less dropouts. The students, and I noticed that I did also a case study about open plan school in Portugal in the 80s. In the 80s, I think it was in 1982, there was a television show, and I have that video, showing that was like the most innovative thing, and that worked really well, and that was really amazing. And I did a case study about that. And then what happened, the team of teachers that were there, that were really great and doing innovative work, one of the teachers, he went to another school, and then new staff came without information, and then they decided, well, let's put some like furniture and create classrooms, and it was terrible. So no information was really received, and but in the beginning, and I have that television show in the 1982, it was in a Portuguese television, national TV. It was like the best thing ever. And I had a lot of interviews with teachers that work there, and I had the chance to interview a student in that open plan school. So he studied in the 80s, and he said to me, well, I love to go to school. School for me was so interesting, so motivating. It was the best thing, the best time of my life. And I love like the teachers, and I love the way I learned. But now I'm an adult, and my son hates going to school. So imagine like experience from the past, where a school environment was so great, and then they changed to a traditional classroom. And now, imagine like students before in that open plan environment, they loved the school and they were learning. And he said to me, oh, I was learning a lot. And now my son, he cannot read, and he's very slow learner, and he hates school. So maybe the future of learning is like an experience of the past. I think we should like consider maybe open plan schools are a solution for the future. And I'm almost ending. For someone that I wish, I hope I can go to Kazakhstan and have like a seminars, visiting schools, and working with some people, and I have more time to give you so much information that I have. collected in more than 20 years of research. But I'm going to finish with the things I started, and I think I have like 80 minutes, 7 minutes. I'm going to finish telling you that what you do in Kazakhstan as teachers is really important. I think you can change the world. I think you change the world of every student that goes to your classroom, and it's a big influence that we have as teachers, like something we say. So we have to be really careful. I think teachers are like very important because we are preparing the future of education, but not only of education, we are preparing the future of the world, and the world is very messy nowadays. Lots of, I wish the money they spend on war, they would invest that on education, because education could prevent wars, and a lot of people are suffering. So it's not a good thing. I want to, so the thing I started was about the butterfly effect. Like small things can have non-linear impacts on a complex system. And I told you the example. Like I had a teacher, he just told me, "Oh, I like the sound of the bass," and I played bass. And just that sentence, I was like, "Bass, electric bass." The electric bass is the instrument that Paul McCartney from the Beatles played. It's the instrument that Sting from the Police plays also. And a band called Pink Floyd, Roger Waters. I love that guy. Is also a bass player. So a small sentence of a teacher that I had in ninth grade. Oh, I cannot say in ninth grade. It changed my life. So sometimes small things can have a huge impact on learning, and space is one of the things that can have a huge impact on learning. And I thank you so much for listening to me. I want to hear from you guys, and thank you. I have much more things to say to you. I'm doing research about space and time and the mind, and if I have time one day, I will talk about the really things I'm studying about out of this world, really out of this world. I believe that you can anticipate learning with our mind. This is very curious, and I'm going to tell you, I'm really studying, like I'm going to give you an example. I can I cannot really not talking to you about this, but I don't have any conclusions so far. But in the time of the Cold War, there were like scientists in America using mediums like the mind, like they could with the mind like describe things in other spaces. Like they were in the United States, and mediums could read things in Russia and in other countries. And they did experiment, and this is very curious. They did experiment like showing photos of really terrible things. If you see a photo of like blood and violence, you have like a reaction on your eye, on your skin. So, and the experience they did is that they were showing like photos, random photos on a computer, and if it was like a peaceful photo with a garden, water, you didn't have the reaction on your skin, and not on your eyes. And what happened is that before the so random images, and before the images appeared, uh, people had, imagine it's going to appear like a terror image, and then before the image appeared, there was a reaction. So it's like our mind can predict what is going to happen. And I'm using that as a music teaching tool. So I noticed, like, if I try to think about like a test, like a flute, a recorder test, I noticed, like, with thousands of tests, using some mind possibilities, and one day I will explain about this, you can teach much better. So actually you can think this as putting yourself in the position of your student, but there's much more to that. So time and space, and I'm going to tell you, just, a lot of people, that 9/11, the Twin Towers, a lot of people cancel the flight. And actually, you know, I read this, like some of the, like, so, you know, that was like a weekly plane that would go to that, those flights were weekly, and the planes that crashed the Twin Towers had less passengers than usual. So, you know, I read a book, they say that maybe they could predict something would happen. I know this is not very scientific, but I'm still doing this research. It's like a researching about the soul. So, but it's like related with space and time. Maybe, you know, we can be in a different time and space and teach for the future. Okay, thank you for listening to me. Now I'm open to every question.